Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 22nd of December of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. First we're going to talk with the northern part of Ukraine, with the borderlands. The Ukrainian forces continue building more and more fortification areas on the border with Republic of Belarus, with Kursk region of Russian Federation, with Bryansk and Belgorod region of Russian Federation. And from one side, the purposes and the reason why the Ukrainians start building this fortification during the winter period of time is that they want to secure themselves from Russian counteroffensive operation, from opening of the second or third front lines. From the other side, this might be a crime schemas to withdraw and to earn more money on the Western help, like an opinion. I'm not saying that this is like this, but I think that the main purpose of building all these fortifications is that Ukrainians don't want to start total mobilization. They don't want to mobilize 500,000 soldiers. According to information we have, the Ukrainians do have around 1 million army, at least according to Ukrainian official authorities. So why do they need to mobilize more if they have a significant army? And the only solution how they can use these forces, they need to release them and they need to take them from the border with Belarus. The Ukrainians don't want Poland and NATO countries to enter the western part of Ukraine because there are very high chances if something goes wrong, the Poland and western countries will cut Lvov area, basically the western part of Ukraine. So they want to use just their own resources. They want to save their independence, at least the independence that they have right now. And to do this, they try to create very powerful fortifications along the border, and this will allow the Ukrainians to reduce the number of forces they need to keep on this direction. According to information we have, few hundreds of thousands of soldiers the Ukrainians need to keep always on the borders with Belarus, with Poland, with Bryansk, with Kursk area, and they can use them and they can reduce the needs in their upcoming total mobilization. Now let's move to Kiev. We got also lots of very interesting updates. As you know, the Prime Minister of Netherlands to deliver 18 F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine. Today I also informed President Zelensky of our government's decision to prepare an initial 18 F-16 fighters aircraft to deliver to Ukraine. This is the words of the Prime Minister of Netherlands. Probably very soon we're going to see them in Ukrainian sky. Obviously these F-16s, this quantity is not going to be the game changers, but this is going to be the first step. Obviously, after this first step, lots of countries will send their more help to Ukraine. About mobilization, as you know, the Ukrainians are planning to mobilize the men that left Ukraine, and obviously they're not able to do this. They can't force the Western countries to do this, and today we have lots of reports from Germany, for example, or other European countries that they will not send Ukrainians in Germany to Ukraine, only if they want to do this by themselves. And the Ukrainians do have tools how to force Ukrainians abroad to come back to Ukraine. I'm not saying that everybody is going to return, but 20-30% can return easily. Now we're moving to the south, and we have lots of very interesting updates from Kherson direction, not from Krynki, by the way. As you can see, today we have a significant number of geolocations, most of them geolocations from the Ukrainian side. And if you notice that during the previous weeks there were almost no activity from the Ukrainian side regarding artillery strikes, HIMARS strikes. I don't remember when the last time we saw a normal footage or geolocated video of another HIMARS strike. And today the Ukrainians published significant number of geolocated videos of HIMARS strikes exactly in Kherson direction, and not just that. So now, after the situation finished, after an ambush that you have seen in the title of this video, I can understand the real purposes of Ukrainian HIMARS strikes. So during the previous 24 hours and during the previous days, the Ukrainians were bombing this territory heavily. Significant number of destroyed Russian armored vehicles, personal carriers, artillery systems, multi-launch rocket system, bases, warehouses, ammo depots. Everything was under complete fire and complete control from the Ukrainian side. And this is another video, for example, in the vicinity of Abrikosovka. In this video, we see how the Ukrainians managed to discover the Russian multi-launch rocket system, few loader vehicles, few personal carriers, second load vehicles, and these things also were destroyed as a result of HIMARS strikes. Then we got another video at the same area in the Abrikosovka, another Ukrainian FPV drone or reconnaissance drone flying above this territory trying to find the Russian positions, and obviously he discovered at some forest another Russian artillery system, howitzer, and as a result of FPV drone strike, that system also was destroyed. So we see certain significant focus from the Ukrainian side. So the question is, what was the purpose? And obviously, when you're talking about HIMARS missiles, the main purpose of the Ukrainians was to overload the Russian air defense system. To overload and not to allow them to counterattack, maybe to force the Russians to start using not air defense systems, but for example aircraft that they can use to, let's say, shut down some missiles, or maybe to use aircrafts to destroy JDAM bombs. For example, on the last video, on this video, we see the use of JDAM bombs, aviation bombs, from the Ukrainian side against the warehouses and ammo depots of Russian Federation. So they were bombing, as you can see, heavily, and exactly on these seconds we can see two Russian aircrafts flying in direction of Ukraine positions. The author of this video told us that these are Su34. These are Russian Su34s that were flying in direction of JDAM carriers with the purpose to shut them down. First of all, this is not Su34. This is MiG-25, the Russian Storm aircraft, Storm aviation. And first of all, they are flying too low, because Su-34 are flying a little bit higher, obviously. And at the end of this video, the Ukrainians are showing that as a result of clashes today, they managed to shut down 3 Russian Su-34. We don't have any geolocated video confirmation. We don't have anything that we can prove or disapprove this piece of information. The only thing we got from the Ukrainian side is the picture of evacuation of the pilots of one of those destroyed Su-34. So we don't have enough of information to tell whether this information is true or it's fake. Very difficult to understand. The only thing I must say that today the Minister of Defense of Ukraine reported that they shot down 3 Russian Su-34. That was an ambush. The reason of that ambush was the hyper usage of HIMARS missiles in Kherson direction, which led to the over-testing and over-stressing Russian air defense. And basically at the final point, they start using Su-34 to shut down maybe the Ukrainian planes or something like this. And they got ambushed by Western countries, probably by Patriots. Currently, it's a no which kind of system the Ukrainians were using to shoot the Russian Su-34 and whether the Ukrainians shot them down, but this is the information that we discussed. When talking about Krynki, no updates about this situation. The Russians continue storming, the Ukrainians continue holding this area, so we'll see what is going to be next. Now we are moving to Zaporizhzhia area. The Russians continue their offensive operation on the flanks of Robotyne. The Russians were attacking during the previous 24 hours in the vicinity of Kopony, also in direction of the main supply road that goes from Novodanilovka to Robotyne. The Russians continue their FPV drone strikes against Ukrainian positions with the 3 lines on the western part of Robotyne, and this is the first part of upcoming Russian next offensive operation in this area, with the purpose to cut another piece of cake, piece of pie in this area, and to get as close as possible to Robotyne, and to try to half encircle this village from the north, from the west, from the south and southeast. For now, the Ukrainians still control Robotyne, and there are no still active clashes inside of the village. Now we are moving to the south Donetsk direction. We have lots of very interesting updates from this territory, and the most important one, of course, are coming from Novomykhailovka. This morning video we have already discussed that the Ukrainians probably counterattack in direction of farms and the warehouse, and the Russians were forced to step back from this territory. Basically, during the previous days, they haven't managed to dig in deeper, and they managed to dig in deeper just in the vicinity of the cemetery. Now they control this territory. During the day, the Russians were bombing heavily the eastern part of Novomykhailovka with TOS flamethrower systems. As we discussed, this is not like artillery preparation. This is the basic approach to clear and to demine this area. Highly unlikely the Russians want to continue offensive operation until they completely sure that the way, at least the roads, are secured. And now this is the thing they are doing. Furthermore, we got few updates of FPV drone strikes in the village itself. On this video, you can see how the Russians were bombing the Ukrainian reinforcement, Ukrainian armored vehicles, the Ukrainian forces that were moving in the village from one side to another. So just a regular military routine, we might say. But there is one and I'm talking about the northern direction. First update we got somewhere at 2 p.m. not at 12 p.m. of the local time from the Russian military expert Rybar. He reported that as a result of Russian offensive operation, as a result of very heavy clashes, the Russians managed to establish control over the stronghold by the name of Zverinets, this one. So this territory was captured by the Russians completely, according to Rybar. A few hours later, another mapper, Syriac, reported that the Russians managed to capture not just Zverinets, but basically to maintain the gray zone, to shorten the front line, to get more positions and strongholds. So according to Syriac, the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to establish control over this territory during the previous day, during the previous 24 hours. So these are the progress of the Russians according to them. But one Russian source reported that as a result of offensive operation, the Russians managed to capture stronghold Zverinets, to penetrate Ukrainian defense belt, to force the Ukrainians to step back, and to break through the Ukrainian front line, and to achieve the total advance around 8.10 kilometers. So, according to some Russian sources, as a result of Russian offensive operation, they managed to establish control over this territory. Of course, the progress is significant. I can't tell you whether it's true or it's fake or it's not true. It's unbelievable first of all. But I'll remind you one thing, that if you remember when we were talking about the Russian attempt to attack the eastern part of Novomikhailivka, this area, I told you that the main purpose of this attack was not to answer Novomikhailivka, but to cut the main supply road that Ukrainians were using to support their forces in Zverinets fortification. So this road was cut off by the Russians during those attacks. The Russians managed to get very close and to establish complete fire control. Furthermore, I assume that the Russians managed to land their infantry, and furthermore, during the previous few days, they were moving to the north, very slowly, step by step. And those operations, successful implementations of those operations, forced the Ukrainians basically to step back. They just retreat from this territory because they understand that nothing can be controlled, nothing can be under Ukrainian control that located to the top and to the right of this yellow line. And basically, they withdraw their positions towards Novomikhailivka itself. Obviously, the front line start collapsing, and now we can say about approaching from the Russian side to the real operational encirclement of this village. So we'll see what is going to be next. Now we are moving to Marinka. We have lots of details from this territory as well. And to be more precise, from the village city by the name of Kurakhova. The Russian sources are saying that Ukrainians are not going to hold not just Avdiivka. The Ukrainians are planning to withdraw significant territories back to mainland of Ukraine. The Ukrainians are going to step back from Kurakhova because this village is not prepared. The Ukrainians are planning to step back from Novomikhailivka, from Avdiivka. And the main reason of that is not that the Ukrainians are weak or they don't know how to fight. The main problem, according to this author, is that the average age of Ukrainian army is 45 plus. 45 plus, and according to information, the Russian army is a little bit younger, better equipped. So this is the main purpose of this situation. Old people, 45 plus, I can't tell they're old, these people, this group of people don't want to fight, they don't want to die, they're not so risky, they saw the life, so that's why they try to sometimes even not to fight and try to find a solution how to avoid this or that operation. So this is the situation in the South Donetsk direction. Now we're moving to Avdiivka. We got also a lot of updates, and probably the most important update we need to pay attention to is this video. This is an interview of ex-commander of battalion Aidar. This is the man on the right, this big face, and he's the ex-commander of Aidar, and he was analyzing the situation, was talking. Obviously he has some connections with the officers and soldiers on the ground, and he told that he spoke with officers, he spoke with the soldiers, and there are very high chances that Ukrainians will take a decision to withdraw their position from Avdiivka even this year, before the new year. So it's 7 days, almost a little bit less than 10 days till the new year, and the Ukrainians will start withdrawing their positions this year. So, and everybody will see and understand this. Where the Ukrainians are going to step back, probably to the newly created defense belt in the area of Камышивка, Новоселовка Першая, Нетайлова, Селидова, Novogrodovka, and so on, Kurachovka, and so on. Furthermore, we got more updates about Stepovo-Berdichi. On this area, the Russians continue advancing. They're moving further in direction of the railways village between the railways in the vicinity of Ocheretina. Furthermore, we got updates that Ukrainians took a decision completely withdraw their positions from Stepovo, and they're trying to dig in deeper and to get and to meet the Russians on the next defense belt on the eastern outskirts of Berdichi. The Russians from their side are not planning to attack in front. They're trying to bypass Berdichi from the north. This is the Russian possible direction of attack, and this is exactly what the Russians are trying to develop and achieve right now by taking the footholds and the tree lines and the trenches on strongholds to the north of Berdichi. So this is the possible Russian solution, how to bypass and how to collapse this territory completely. Now we are moving to Bakhmut, Avdiivka direction. Once again, we have a lot of very interesting updates. The Russians launched probably one of the biggest offensive operation ever in this area. Just with a few words and very fast, the Russians are advancing along channel in direction of Chasov Yar. Some tree lines were captured. The Russians are trying to penetrate the Ukrainian defense belt along the railways, so they're trying to enter this territory and basically to encircle a small Russian forces army in Klishchevka, and probably to start encirclement of Ukrainian forces in Andreevka based on this line. So this is the first possible cauldron. This is probably the second Russian cauldron the Russians are planning to start. The Ukrainians during the previous days made a series of counterattacks trying to attack the Russian positions along the railways, and the main reason of that is that Ukrainians still have some foothold on the Russian side of the railways, and basically these Ukrainians need to some evacuation road or they will be abandoned. So this is the reason of these counterattacks, to increase the let's say the passage, the safe road for the Ukrainians, and to give them at least small chances for evacuation. Situation is very difficult. When talking about Chernobyl, it's the Russians. This morning we got report that they start fighting for this air defense airfield, very small one. Probably as a result of the clashes they managed to capture, because today we got a geolocated video from Kamerton. This is ex-Wagner forces and special unit Akhmat, how they will start bombing and attacking the Ukrainians along these tree lines. So basically this is the tree line, the last barrier in front of the southern part of Ivanovska, and the Russians start bombing this territory heavily, as you can see. So obviously the next step is going to be a very fast and unexpected rush in direction of this tree line, and then the battle for Ivanovska is going to may start at least from two directions. So the situation in this area also develops not in Ukrainian favor. When talking about the northern part, the Russians are moving from Khromovo, trying to capture strongholds, and they're trying to work very fast, and they don't want to give Ukrainian times for regrouping. Furthermore, the Russians advancing along the railways from Bogdanovka. Some sources are saying that they got this railway station and that they managed to clear, or currently there is a clearing operation. Furthermore, the Russians are pushing in direction of the new cemetery on the north of Popovsky forest, which also can lead to another collapse of the hill, strategical hill in this area. I'm talking about Popovsky forest, and if this hill falls, obviously the Russians will get significant superiority not just over Ivanovska. This is the gates for further offensive operation in direction of the Chasov Yar, because behind Popov Les there are no more cities, there is Chasov Yar, the next city, the next town on direction of Russian forces, on the way of Russian forces, and of course to attack to the south in direction of Ivanovsky from the north. When talking about Bogdanovka, today we got more geolocations and more videos from the main hill. This is I'll remind you that this is the main Ukrainian hill that they try to hold, and that controlling of this hill allowed the Ukrainians to control Bogdanovka, and the Russians don't have possibilities to enter the village until the Ukrainians control the hill. So that's why during the previous day the Russians continue bombardments of this area, trying to pin down and suppress the Ukrainians, not to allow them even not to raise their heads, but even to get a fresh portion of another of air or something like this. Significant bombardment. The Ukrainians still haven't found any solution how to let's say to get their positions back. I'm talking about like superiority on the hill, and obviously after this artillery preparation, the next step is the storming operation. If we increase the number of days since the beginning of the week, since 17th of December, we see the Russian focus. Now, the Russians understand what they need, how to capture Bogdanovka, and this is the key area, this hill. If they can suppress, there are no problems to take Bogdanovka. If they can't suppress, they can't take Bogdanovka. Everything is simple. Now we are moving to Soledar direction because we have also significant number of updates from this territory. The Russians, after a few days operational pause, renewed their offensive operation further in direction of Avdiivka and Sporne. There were a few FPV drone strikes against the Ukrainian ammo depots in this area. As a result of another strike, a very big, let's say, ammo depot was destroyed. Maybe mines, maybe some ammo was there. Furthermore, the Russians were bombing Avdiivka. And the main purpose of this attack is that there are a lot of fields and there are a lot of minefields, and there are not so many safe roads that either the Russians and the Ukrainians can use for redeployment of their forces. And the Ukrainians do have maps of minefields and safe roads, and the Russians don't have. But the Russians, probably due to experience they got during the previous months, managed to find out the main Ukrainian roads, and they were just bombing and attacking them. And so basically, if the Ukrainians want to send some reinforcements to the south, they need to use this road. That's it. This is very simple. So that's why the Russians attacked this territory. They pinned the Ukrainians down, not allow them to redeploy some reinforcement, and the Russians launched their own offensive operation along the tree lines to the north, trying to encircle Sporne from the south west, and maybe to get further, maybe to penetrate. But according to the Ukrainians, there were a few videos. The Russian attacks were repelled. There were some losses, and currently we don't know the real Russian progress on this direction. Now we are moving to Lyman area. We got significant number of updates. To be more precise, few more tanks, few more Leopards were destroyed in this area. On this video we can see two more Ukrainian Leopards destroyed somewhere in the fields of Tarskoye salient. Two more Leopards to be more precise. Furthermore, a little bit to the south we got another video on how another Ukrainian Leopard was counterattacking the Russians. Leopard got its fire positions, its used the entire magazine, and after that Leopard was trying to return back, but on the way back home this Leopard was damaged by the Russian FPV drone and also was destroyed. So what does it mean? First of all, if you increase the number of updates, let's say for 2 days, we have significant number of destroyed armored vehicles. Just for 2 days, the Ukrainians on these fields in this area lost maybe up to 15 armored vehicles, including up to 5 Leopards or something like this. And the most important, another important part is the destination of Ukrainian tanks attacks. If you remember, yesterday we discussed that the Ukrainian tank that was destroyed somewhere in this area was attacking the Russian positions along this tree line. This tank that we saw geolocation video just a few minutes ago was attacking the Russians in this tree line. So as I understand, just based on this not complete full 100% evidences, the Russians, as a result of clashes during the previous days, managed to establish control probably over this territory. The chances of this progress is 90%, something like this. And this is a very huge progress. The distance between the edge Russian positions here and let's say Terny itself is less than 5 kilometers. It's nothing for the Russians. Furthermore, the Russians during these clashes managed to discover the minefields and safe roads, and now the Russians know where to go, how to go, and when they're gonna get there. When talking about Kupyansk direction, we have also lots of very interesting details, and probably the most weird and interesting update that Ukrainians try to increase their defense along Barova. So currently this is going to be the main Ukrainian defense belt and probably 2024 of the next year. So the next year is going to be the battle probably for this village, and the Ukrainians are trying to build this defense, few lines of let's say lines of defense, maybe 4, maybe 3, including the village itself. The Ukrainians are trying to build some bridges to connect the one part of Skol River with another. So this is going to be a very heavy clashes, a very heavy battle, probably the next year. And so the Ukrainians will try to step back. They will try to hold the territory along the Oskol River, try to stop the Russians. And they expect very heavy clashes very soon, as I understand, on this direction. Also, the Russians continue bombardments of Ukrainian positions along the borderline, trying maybe to show them that nothing can be everything. You can expect everything from our side, including offensive operation, not just along the regular, like common, let's say, combat line, but also from Kupyansk or Belgorod or Bryansk direction. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.